Welcome to episode 420 of the Reformed Brotherhood. I'm Tony.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are proud members of the Society of Reformed Podcasters.
Falling down for you. There's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.
Hi.
Hi.
Take two. We already recorded a whole intro and my recording equipment pooped out on us, so we had to start over.
It's okay.
It's okay. So for the listener who is new to the show, this is not my normal co-host. I have with me my lovely wife, Ashley, who is Jesse's little sister. And our schedule got a little bit weird this week recording. Ashley and Jesse's parents were visiting Jesse, and so we didn't have an opportunity to record in our normal time. So I thought it would be fun to have Ashley on the show. Some people might have heard her voice on the show. We did like a little 5-10 minute episode. I actually think it was on the same thing we're going to talk about tonight now that I'm thinking about it. I don't actually know for sure that episode fully ever got posted or not. But
it's lost in the archives.
It is lost in the archives. If you find it out there, then great for you. Let me know and we'll do something about that. But yeah, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, I like to think I'm the link between Jesse and Tony, since I'm the only thing you have in common. Well, you have lots of other things in common, but I'm the original.
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose I don't know what God would have done in his providence, but I guess maybe there'd still be a show, but it'd be a very different show.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we get into our topic, which is going to be just sort of a little lighthearted topic, we're not going to do our normal definitive theological episode, although everything's theological. I thought it would be fun to have a little bit of a bear-all kind of an episode intro here, and I'm going to put myself in the spotlight here. Ashley, what is something that you know about me that you think the listener would be surprised by? I didn't give her this question ahead of time, so she might need a second.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, currently, the first thing that comes to mind is that you no longer have a beard and it's just a mustache.
That's true. That's true. Although I think some of the listeners would know that because I shared a picture to our Telegram channel.
Oh, well, I wish you had told me that before I answered.
That's okay. As we like to say, we do this without a safety net. So what's something else?
Yeah, that's tough. Something that the listeners wouldn't know about you.
Something that would surprise the listeners.
Oh, that would surprise the listeners. I mean, do the listeners know that you usually get up at 4 a.m.?
I don't think it would surprise them.
Okay. Well, I don't.
Apparently, I'm a totally open book, or my wife doesn't know anything about me, one or the other, or both, I guess.
Well, I don't listen to the podcast.
That's true.
So I don't actually know what you talk about.
All right. Well, this was a failed segment, so until next time.
Enjoy the brotherhood. What is it?
We'll have to stop and plan that out when we get there. Well, Ashley offered to join the show tonight to kind of give us some content and to have a little conversation here. And we thought it would be fun. Ashley is an avid reader, but she's also an avid podcast listener, although my heart just was crushed to hear that she doesn't listen to the show. Actually, I knew that. I know she doesn't listen to the show. But I thought it would be fun to talk about maybe like the top 4 or 5, however much time we have. Like, what podcasts are you listening to now? And like, what do you like about them? And maybe we'll just have a little conversation on each one.
So these are podcasts I'm currently listening to?
Yeah, like your favorite. I mean, you could do like top 5 all-time podcasts if you wanted to, but
right.
This was your topic, so whatever you thought was about.
All right. Well, I'll start with one that I just binge listened to while I was doing laundry and dishes. It's a podcast called Hooked, and you can get it on Apple Music. I think it's actually part of the Apple TV Plus network, whatever that is, but it's called Hooked. And it's basically about this guy who worked for Boeing for, I think, 30 plus years and then became addicted to opiates and then started robbing banks and successfully robbed 30 banks before he was caught. And on the podcast, they interview him, they talk to him. He's a really interesting guy. Some of the things that he says are really funny. And I would definitely recommend it.
So that's like Catch Me If You Can, like in the air with drugs.
No, it's not at all like that.
That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, the guy becomes an addict And while he's currently working at Boeing. So like, I wouldn't recommend flying.
I mean, that's like a general statement right now for Boeing. Yeah. They're on a rough go at it.
It is, but also the guy worked there for such a long time while he was addicted to opiates. Anyway, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but yeah, that's the gist of it. And it's like, I mean, you won't be able to stop listening.
Yeah. So what's it called? It's called Hooked.
Hooked.
And you can get it on Apple Podcasts or pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. Probably.
Yeah.
So cool. What else are you listening to?
There's another podcast I love called Criminal. And I've probably been listening to that for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I think the entire time that it has been a show. And they do a different episode each week, and it's a different story each time. And it's sometimes historical true crime. Sometimes it's contemporary crimes. It's not usually violent. So it's not like gruesome or anything like that, but it's just like super interesting. And they often will interview people involved in the crimes. And the episodes are very funny. So you don't think it would sound like a funny premise, but there's a lot of funny kind of stupid crimes out there that people commit and they get caught for. And then you hear them interviewing later about like reminiscing about this and why they made the decisions that they did. So that one is called Criminal. And that's a great show. I mean, there's all kinds of fun and interesting episodes on that. There was one that I just listened to that's called The Family Land, and it's parts 1 and 2. And these just dropped at the end of October and beginning of November. And they're all about people living on the East Coast who had this land that was in their family for generations, and it got taken away from them. And people who were living on the land, family members, refused to move. And so they actually went to prison for that. And then they came back and fought it. It's just a very interesting story.
Yeah. And I feel like Criminal is kind of like, it sort of rode that true crime wave that started with Serial, but I would describe it as almost kind of like quirky true crime. Mm-hmm. There's always almost like a gimmick or like a little quirk to it. And I think you're right. They have usually like a little sense of humor. It's got sort of like an NPR feel to it, but I don't think it's NPR that makes it. But it's like, I'm Phoebe Judge. This is Criminal. Yeah, it's a very good, or it's kind of like lore for true crime, like a similar kind of a feel. Yeah, I've listened to it a little bit. I think it's a great show, and it's kind of a good. It's sort of a good window into like the human condition in a lot of ways too, because they usually try to take some sort of like philosophical element of crime or like the psychology of what's going on in the person. There's always a layer of that on there too.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
All right, what else you got?
Let's see. So I guess something your listeners might be interested in is the Focus on the Family has a lot of different podcasts. And one of the ones that I do like to listen to is the Focus on Marriage podcast, which usually posts like a 5 or 10 minute episode every day or a couple of times a week. And it's just little snippets on discussions they have with people on their staff and their counselors about different issues related to marriage. And I think it's a great podcast to listen to. It's really quick and easy to digest. And I think a couple years ago, maybe I recommended that you start listening to it to work on our marriage. No, I'm just kidding. But it's fun when you listen to it because then we can talk about something that we heard on it. And we've done that a couple of times. Yeah. And sometimes we'll change something that we're doing in our marriage because of something we've heard on the podcast. Yeah.
I think it's really funny. This is a little game that I play with myself that you don't know about is I'll listen to the episodes and then I'll try to tell when you've listened to an episode based on things you say or things you do. And like sometimes I can tell when you've listened to a particular episode because like this is like a made up example, but like, let's pretend that the example is like give your spouse a compliment every day. Like I'll tell you're putting that into practice because I can like tell, not that you don't give me compliments every day anyways, but like, that's just an example. And they have, there's the Focus on kids, Focus on Parenting.
Focus on Parenting.
Yeah, they have the Focus on Parenting, which is same show format, same host. And it's usually like there's a discussion between the kind of like the standing co-hosts of the show. And then they'll go to like a clip from a conference or a speaker or something like that. And usually it's they'll do 4 or 5 episodes on a single topic, and it's like they'll build on that theme. Yeah, I think it's great. And it's nice because it is short. It's easy to appreciate. Just like anything else, you have to be discerning. Some of the stuff that they say is not always as reliable as I'd like it to be. I think sometimes you hear stuff on there and you're like, I'm not so sure about that. They're definitely coming from like a particular theological position and like a philosophy of marriage position that's not going to align with everybody. But overall, it's just good general biblical wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And I mean, if it gets you talking with your spouse about something, that's the whole point of the podcast. Even if you don't agree with what they're saying. Right. Like there's been times where I've listened to an episode and been like, I don't like that. And I'll talk to you about it and be like, Did you listen today? What did you think about what that guy said? Yeah,
for sure. And sometimes I think, I think in Reformed circles, so you're not involved in most of like the online Reformed controversies. You're probably not like hearing about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the Reformed world as much because you're just not online as much. But in our circles, in Reformed circles, it's like we hear about like the patriarchy and Doug Wilson and like all this stuff that's going on. There's a different kind of like marriage perspective that's represented by this that has its own set of like questions and challenges. But yeah, I think you're right. Like it's good because most of it is pretty like just general good biblical practice. And when you do have this stuff that's a little off center or a little bit out there, it's good to just sort of talk through it. And usually there's a kernel of wisdom even in that stuff, even in the things that you look a little sideways at. And the parenting one, I think, is very much the same way. Like you and I haven't, we've been parents for exactly the same amount of time, obviously, as each other, but like we haven't been parents for that long. And even like just the amount of time that we've been parents, I can see things where I look at, I'm like, oh, I would do that different, or I'm not sure I agree with that perspective. But it's useful to think through those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What else are you listening to?
Let's see. I'm scrolling through my Apple Podcast app right now. Let's get into it because there's one podcast I'm listening to that is not for everyone. So
is it the Reformed Brotherhood?
It is not because I don't listen to that.
Dang it. Okay, let's go.
I don't know how many of your listeners are true crime fans, but a few years ago, there was kind of a famous murder that happened in a project in Chicago. And it's known as the bathroom mirror murders. And what they found out was that the way this project was built, the medicine cabinets opened up from their bathrooms, opened up into like a crawl space that was connected to all of the other apartments.
That's not sketchy at all. Even a little bit.
Yeah. So people were breaking into other people's apartments, like at night or when they weren't there, to steal things. And then a woman ended up being murdered that way. And she had called the police multiple times and told them that people were coming in through the bathroom. And they didn't believe her. There was a question of whether she had like dementia or some kind of episode, and then ended up actually being murdered by someone because of that.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So that podcast is called Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder.
I love podcasts because they have such like specific titles like that.
Yeah, and I guess there's a movie, like a famous 90s horror flick, and I don't watch horror movies, but I guess it's called The Candyman or something like that. So that movie was like based on this real life murder, and the podcast is partly about that. Like how the movie sort of got away with using the story, but they didn't really give any credit to the woman that this happened to. And it's an investigative podcast. So it's also about like how the crime was charged and who was charged for it. And I haven't finished listening to it, so I don't know how it ends. And I had heard of this true crime that had happened, but I didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. And I'm listening to that. I guess it's part of the like 48 hours channel or whatever on Apple Podcasts.
Okay. Yeah.
So
You're like really into true crime.
I am. Oh, our dog just saw a mouse.
Maybe.
I think she did.
Well,
She just jumped down and is sniffing at where the mouse comes in.
all right. Well, now our whole audience knows we have mice, so that's cool.
That's fine.
It's fine.
Oh, this is something they didn't know about you.
You're about to hear the dog. We probably are going to have to like wrap this up because she's going to start barking and wake up the babies.
No, it's fine.
It's fine. They sleep through pretty much everything.
It's fine. I am into true crime a lot, but not as much as I used to be.
Yeah, you used to listen to like
Only
hours of true crime and true crime like audiobooks, and I mean you were really, really into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I had Augie, and I had very bad postpartum depression, and ever since then I've not returned to it the way that I used to.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's a fine interest if you have it.
Yeah.
As long as you do it appropriately. You're not just like taking joy in someone else's.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between like a true crime podcast or whatever, where the point is to sort of like investigate truth and to sort of like identify things and almost like a philosophical look at things. And then there's just like kind of crass, like voyeuristic true crime where it's just about like
Right.
the sort of details and stuff. And I don't know that I can think of any podcasts that are like that necessarily, but I know they're out there. Yeah, I think those are interesting recommendations, and I think people would do well to sort of give it a shot.
Well, I'll list a few. Just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Since Luna probably is going to start barking at that mouse.
Yeah, any second now. This is going to be the Reformed Bark cast in a minute.
Oh man, she's running from vent to vent in the house, sniffing out the mouse. Have you talked about Westies on the podcast?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then people know these are like terriers bred to like
Root out mice. And
root
stuff.
out
Yeah.
mice
Oh,
and
yeah.
rats and
Yeah, for the listener, most people who listen to the show know we recently moved into our first purchased home, and it's a little mobile home. And mobile homes are like notoriously difficult to keep mice out of just because of the way they're constructed. And it's starting to get like the nights are starting to get cold enough that the mice are finding their way in. Oh, she's about to wake the toddler up. This is going to be a disaster. We better go quickly.
she looks awfully cute though. Her tail is straight up in the air.
All right, why don't you give me three quick lightning round recommendations for podcasts that people should check out?
All right. So Toddlers Made Easy.
Yes, this is a good one.
That's a good podcast. Tony and I both listen to it. It's done by a pediatrician. It's quick little episodes of how to deal with different issues related to having toddlers.
She has a golden doodle. She
that relevant
to the podcast. She always talks about how she has a golden doodle. She's the grandmother of like 3 kids and also her golden doodle.
She has one grandkid.
Whatever, but
Do
she has
you
a golden
listen to the
doodle. I do.
podcast?
I listen to the podcast. I know that the best way to potty train, according to her, is just to let it happen.
That sounds like a big mess.
Sounds like what we're doing.
It does. It sounds like bath time for Augie.
That's true. Bath time for Augie. Yes. Our son has discovered that he can, if he wants to, he can just poop in the tub and he'll grow out of it. But this is not my favorite phase.
I don't think he's doing it on purpose.
No, I don't think he is. But
no.
I think he's.
And he did. I mean, this is way more information than people want to know, but he did it tonight. And I think he was embarrassed. I don't think he didn't mean to do it.
Yeah, he laughed when it happened. And then when he realized what happened, because I was giving him his bath, when he realized what happened, he got really, really sheepish and embarrassed.
So people should please write in if you have had your toddler poop in the bathtub.
I think most people have.
Well, I would like to hear from people.
Yeah, for sure.
I would.
Yeah.
So
please let us know.
Please call in.
There's no call
Do you have
in
a call
number.
line?
Not anymore, no.
Oh.
I mean, I'm sure it still exists.
That's
but we
too
never
bad.
use that anymore.
Okay, well, Tony's cell phone is. Let's see, another quick one: the Lazy Genius podcast.
Okay.
Did you ever listen to that?
I did a couple times. I started listening to it in the midst of their like, here's all the stuff you do during COVID sequence. And I was like, I'm not this. There's too much of this. I can't do it.
Okay. I don't think I was listening to it then. So the Lazy Genius is, it's part of the Office Ladies podcast network now.
The Office Ladies have a podcast network.
Yeah. They're like doing really well in the world.
Well, yeah.
That's another good episode or podcast to listen to.
Yeah.
Lazy Genius is all about how to... Oh, the baby's crying.
Keep going. She'll be fine.
Oh. Anyway, just listen to Lazy Genius. It's like how to hack your life, basically. It's good stuff.
Yeah. For the listener who thinks that I just advocated that the baby should just like cry, we're going to be done in like a minute here and she'll self-soothe herself.
And then the Newsworthy.
Yeah, that's a good news show.
Quick 10-minute news. It's unbiased as far as that's possible.
Yeah.
And it's just quick. And that's the only way I get my news now.
Yeah, it's pretty upbeat. She doesn't take a doom and gloom approach to the news. Even on like tough stories, she's usually pretty positive.
Yeah. I mean, it really is just exactly what you need to know and nothing else.
Cool. So do you remember how we're supposed to end the show?
Da, da, da.
Well, yeah, there's that. There's that.
Let's see. Until next time.
I say, until next time, honor everyone.
Love the Brotherhood?
Yes.
Okay.
I like that was a question mark at the end there.
I liked my original enjoy the Brotherhood.
Well, and let's enjoy the Brotherhood too. That's good too.
Sisterhood?
Yeah, sure. Sisterhood, familyhood.
Enjoy the peoplehood?
Enjoy the personhood.
Personhood?
Yeah. I'm going to edit all this part out after you said love the Brotherhood. So.
No, don't.
Okay, I guess I won't.
Yeah, leave it in. That's nice.
All right. Well, actually, until next time, honor everyone.
Enjoy the Brotherhood.
What if I'm far from home? Oh, brother, I would hear you call. What if I